Planet Dolan. From trying to let out a fart to being attacked by a vulture, the Planet Dolan crew reenact some of the best true stories from our subreddit about the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to us at work. I'm Zaragamba, and today I'll be your narrator. Number 10 was submitted by Colonelabeuckworth. Sweet Commando worked at an injured animal sanctuary, and one day he was doing routine cleanings in the large bird enclosures. The last enclosure was shared by 2 turkey vultures. One of the birds was notorious for biting and even pulling hair. Sweet Commando walked in, then heard the door lock shut behind him. He was now trapped with a violent bird that is capable of tearing flesh off of corpses. 45 minutes later, a father and his 2 sons showed up. Sweet Commando shoved the key through the mesh wiring so the man could unlock the door. The younger of the 2 sons stared in horror at Sweet Commando's bloody, bruised legs and said, "Daddy, you told me they eat dead things, but you never told me they eat people too." Number 9 was submitted by TheLovelyHolly. Gooby had been working at McDonald's for 2 months, and it was her first day out of training. She had to make drinks that day, but Gooby kept giving people the wrong drinks and was getting yelled at for not getting the food out fast enough. Eventually, the tea urn ran out, so she had to get to the back and get a new one, and they were really, really heavy. They had a shelf where all of the sauces were kept, and while Gooby was bringing the new tea urn to the front window, she crashed into the shelf and knocked the whole thing over. There were sauces and bags everywhere. At least $300 worth of sauces was crushed. Number 8 was submitted by Silent Knight 487. Silver Spider was working in his office and was called down for something. He decided to check it out, and when he got there, he tripped on the last stair and knocked over a cake that was nearby. The cake got all over him. It turned out that they wanted him to help decorate it for a surprise party. Number 7 was submitted by ShilohFeatherpaw. One day Froggy was working on the self-scan at the grocery store, and no one was coming through, so she decided it was a good time to attempt to let out a fart. She'd been holding it in for a while, and it was starting to get painful, but, being a girl, she was raised to always excuse herself if she needed to rip ass. She figured it wouldn't be too loud, but alas, she was wrong. Instead, a small toot sound slipped out. Just when she thought it couldn't get any more awkward, a customer who was in line looked up to find the source of the sound. Froggy just walked away, too embarrassed to own up to it. Number 6 was submitted by KnightOMoon. Sid used to work at McDonald's when he was 17. It was a little after the lunch rush and he was working the front counter. There wasn't anyone ordering, but he noticed an older gentleman lingering near the counter. Sid decided to ask him if he needed help. What came out was,
"Are you gonna order something, or...?"
The man kind of smirked to himself and went up to the counter. The man asked if Sid knew who he was. He said no. Then the guy said, "I'm the person who signs your paychecks." He was the owner of the store Sid worked in, and he also owned the only other McDonald's in town. Number 5 was submitted by Allinator. Spinal Palm used to be a paper carrier, and one winter he was delivering while the road was coated with ice. He wanted to see if he didn't slip with his steel-toe shoes on, so he crossed the road to deliver one paper, and it worked. He was feeling confident, but on his way back to the cart, he slipped on the road and ended up going down the hill at high speed. His butt skidded across the 4-ways crossing avoiding traffic and scraped across the cement where a salt truck had been. And then he landed face first in a rose bush. When he got home, his parents asked him why he was all cut up and bloody. They couldn't stop laughing when he told them the story. Number 4 was submitted by scarysob. Tolop was working at a Levi's store in the stockroom and needed to use the bathroom badly. He thought he turned off his walkie-talkie that they all had and put it in his pocket. Halfway through his piss, his co-worker knocked on the door and told him that his walkie-talkie was still on and that they could all hear him pissing. He panicked and quickly turned it off. Number 3 was submitted by michaeldiamente. Gogak was a mall Santa during the holidays a few years ago. He was the guy who dressed up like Santa all day and kids would tell him what they wanted for Christmas. The last boy who sat on his lap was very nervous. He sat on Gogak's lap and peed his pants. Gogak was so embarrassed, but he didn't want to panic with a 6-year-old on his lap. He told the kid that it wasn't the first time old Santa's lap got wet, even though it was. Number 2 was submitted by AGrimFate. Doopy used to work as a barista and had some weird regulars. One day, this woman walked in and stormed up to Doopy and yelled at her, "This hoe is sleeping with my husband!" Doopy turned bright red. Her boss came up and said, "Her?" The woman snapped, "You deaf? Yes, fire her." Doopy's boss laughed. This girl right here is cheating with your husband. Are you serious? Lady, this girl couldn't sleep with your husband. This girl is not only a virgin. When we brought in strippers, she not only didn't bat an eye or flirt with any of them, but she told them to put their clothes back on. This girl is so innocent and pure that the other day I asked her if she knew what sex was, and she said, the dictionary defines. She knows only by books. The whole store had gathered around as Doopy's boss told the woman every way she couldn't sleep with her husband. Doopy was so scared and embarrassed that she went to the freezer and stayed in there for an hour to avoid customers. It turned out the lady's husband was one of their regulars. Number 1 was submitted by me, and it was the most embarrassing thing that happened to me at work. I got my first full-time job straight out of high school, didn't even have a summer break. I was installing audio-visual gear like PA systems and projectors, and I'd gotten to 3 months into the job, which is the end of the probationary period. Now it was a decent drive from my house to work, about an hour with no traffic, and at peak hour that becomes a lot longer. On the last day of probation, I managed to sleep in until about the time I was supposed to start work. I called and apologised to my boss that I was going to be late, and I headed into work as quickly as I could. When I got there, the people who were still standing around the warehouse were having a laugh at how I'd celebrated my 3-month anniversary with being 3 hours late for work. And that's how I lost my first job. A huge thanks to the folks over in our Planet Dolan subreddit for submitting their stories. We have another question for you. What's the dumbest thing your boss ever told you to do? Let us know in the Reddit page link below and you might be featured in a future countdown.
Planet Dolan is now a video game. Play it as Dolan, Melissa, and the rest of the PD crew collecting shinies to unlock skins and power-ups. Download from the Android or iOS App Store and start racing today for free.
Well, that's it for this countdown, but catch you guys next time.